My name's Tom. I'm the BFI Network exec for the Southeast region, based at Film Hub Southeast. I'm really pleased to welcome you today for today's BFI Network live talk with Bertmark and McGregor. I wanted to do something that looks at aspects of sound design within film for some time, so I'm really grateful to both Anna and Will for their time this afternoon and give you all the opportunity to hear about their work together and any other questions that you may have. Please, throughout the talk, feel free to type in any questions that I mentioned and that you might have for Anna and Will, and type them into the Q&A section, which is at the bottom of your screens. And we will aim to try and get through as many of them as possible, either during or at the end of the talk. Okay, I'm going to hand you over to them now, and I'll see you later. Thank you. Bye.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for zooming in today.
Just for clarity, I'm William.
So yeah, we thought we'd start off by talking about how we got started. We thought that might be a good place to start.
You first, then.
Me first.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess how I usually is trying to sum this up quickly. Well, I'm from Sweden originally. I came over to the UK to study something called music technology, which was a big deal in 2001, and envisioned myself working in a music studio, and I'd done music for years, and then once I graduated, a lot of music studios closed down, and I found a job. I was very lucky to find an assistant job for a sound designer called Paul Davis. I didn't really know sound was a job at that point, so but I absolutely fell in love with it. And obviously got some assistant credits, and then got trained in dialogue editing and sound effects editing, and then went freelance. And then I started doing sound supervision for low budget features. And then, yeah, I was lucky enough to keep getting work. So yeah, I guess that's a very quick kind of, in a couple of sentences, like, yeah, how I got where I am.
How long was it from the time when you realised that sound design was something you could do to doing the sound design for, say, your first full-length film?
Because when I was assisting, I was obviously assisting Paul, and also working with a lot of incredible sound editors. So I kind of just was watching them really and learning from these teams, and then, yeah, it just felt like a really natural kind of progression to wanting to work with directors more directly, and working with how sound design can enhance stories and things like that, and just working with, crafting it, I think, together with directors was something that really, kind of
So for
grew
someone
from that.
looking to get involved in sound design, is it like a camera department where you've got the trainee, you've got the assistant camera, you've got focus puller, which can be a route into being a director of photography? Is it a similar type of thing within the sound?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, it's very much, something that you develop as part on your kind of, part of the, part of the team really, and part of those roles that you kind of, you learn. The more you do it, the more you learn. Obviously, you start with probably assisting, and then just getting, more experience really, and then working out which route you want to take. Not everyone maybe wants to be a sound designer, but there's so many specialisms, I think, that you can really, that you kind of, for me, the more experience I got, the more I watched people work, the more I kind of got a deeper understanding of what could be done really.
Nice. I'm learning things.
Yeah. So Will, tell us about your start. So I know you went to film school, but before then, did you work with films when you were younger?
A little bit on that. I went to an arts University of Creative Arts, and I didn't actually do a film degree. I did a screen arts degree, which was installation, graphic design, webs, and everything, photography. But to wind it back a bit, I grew up on a farm, rural community in Norfolk, and there's no filmmakers in my family. I didn't even know that was the thing you could do. I just liked being creative and liked making things. And at some point, taking pictures, stills, and turned into picking up a video camera and just making short films on the farm. But I didn't really know that was a career, or and then weirdly it was watching like behind the scenes on DVDs. So I'd watch, I exhaust my limited collection of DVDs that I had when I was growing up, and then I'd watch the director's commentaries, which is something I really miss now, actually. Now everything's streaming, I miss the old director's commentaries. And then actually, I think it was the Lord of the Rings box set with all the extended editions, with all of the sort of behind the scenes with Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
I watched that and I was like, this looks like so much fun. And someone actually makes these things that I watch. Sort of that would be early noughties. So I was probably about 12, 13. So I just started, I originally wanted to be a production designer. And even like wrote to Weta Workshop and like drew illustrations, and I think just got obviously turned down everywhere because I was just a kid and didn't really know how anything worked. So I then just made little short films to get experience myself, and then submitted them to young people's kind of film festivals, Cinemagic in Belfast. And there was also one in where was it? In Bradford, the Co-op Film Festival, which I don't think runs anymore. So it was just sort of learning to submit to festivals and meet people, even when I was a teenager, really. And then eventually went to uni and learned a little bit more formally, but even so in a kind of arts environment. And then just kept making short films, which led to TV and commercials and film. There's a question come in, and I wouldn't say predictably, but it's a Poldark question,
yes.
Which is definitely something that, it's actually the Poldark clapperboard is behind me there. Nice. So let's ask, what was the process of working on Poldark? That's a good question, but quite a broad one. Process of working on Poldark. Sent a script. I directed Misfits, which was my first TV opportunity. Actually, I say that my first opportunity was interviewing for Skins, which I did a horrible interview and failed and didn't get the job. But in failing that interview, I managed to improve my interview technique. And then once you got first TV credit, I feel like the opportunities then follow. How did you get your first TV opportunity? Having an agent who had watched short film, so the agent watched my short films and they can start getting you into the room. And then, lost a few, but then eventually managed to get one.
Well, I guess it's the kind of a seal of trust, isn't it?
But shows like Misfits and a lot of E4 shows and BBC Three shows are really good proving grounds for first time HODs. I feel like I didn't answer the process of working on Poldark question very well, sorry. But yeah.
Oh, here's a good one. What do you think is the key to a good director-sound designer relationship, and how do you think a good director communicates with a sound designer?
Well, we want different perspectives, so that would be interesting to know.
Key to a good sound designer relationship. I guess from my perspective, I always try to, obviously, sometimes the very first step, sometimes even before I meet a director I'm going to work with, I read the script. And then you get a really good kind of idea of, their style, and especially for obviously a writer-director, get an understanding of what you're looking for and what story you want to tell, and then I look at kind of how can I help that process, and sometimes I know that the director's got sometimes very strong ideas about, I definitely want maybe have a lot of references, and I want this, and I want this sound that, or and sometimes you might not have that kind of strong direction. It's all about kind of helping. I think I find my job is very much kind of helping director explore what can be done and what's possible, and really go on that journey of discovery together. So yeah, that's I think it's a really key part of the relationship, really, and finding a common language for the film, because I know sound, it can be very hard to talk about, because sometimes firstly, it's like obvious things. It's invisible. We take it for granted. If we see an image and someone opening mouth, we just expect there to be a clear kind of dialogue and things like that. So it's kind of finding a language with how to kind of describe the sounds that we might be looking for.
I would say a very similar thing in that you, as a director, I think when you're working with a sound design, you don't want to be too prescriptive, because you can actually talk about the story and the emotion, and then the sound designer works out the texture and the actual practicality of the sound. So I think when I just try and talk about what the scene's about, or the emotion, or what the story, with Gwen, that danger and fear of nature and the horror coming from landscape, I think, something we talked about, and then you did a beautiful job with shaping the wind and creating tension through the landscape. And also just the sound of even if it's birds or animals like foxes that are kind of uncanny and kind of creepy. I think it was more, I tried not to talk about the details of sound, but then what you try and achieve. And then obviously you've got the knowledge and the experience and the taste to make that work, rather than a director being too prescriptive. I can talk about for ages, but I think that's it kind of sums it up really well. Just trying to and I also love that kind of Gwen being the amazing film that it is. Like, the script just was it just lent itself to sound design so much, and there wasn't a huge amount of dialogue, as you say. There was a lot of really space for showing a lot of nature and the incredible photography and the performances and everything. Really almost was like this amazing palette where I could just go in and just the sound design could really play a big role in the storytelling, which was just a dream for a sound designer. It's sparse, so there's space to be subtle with the sound design. There's a question here that's getting into the industry post-lockdown. So there's a thing that we can talk about, what it's like being in lockdown and coming out of it, about getting, getting work experience and getting themselves in a position to be working after lockdown. I'd say I'm in the same boat. I do write, but I'm a director, and I can't make anything. I can't animate. I need to have an industry that's working in order for me to make films. So all I'm doing, and all I'd recommend to other people, is to keep communicating, keep reaching out to people, but whether it's on social media, whether it's your peers, or whether it's people further on in the industry than you, and communicate and talk and chat about ideas and common interests. I think it is a misconception that everyone has loads of time now. I think going, they must have hours in their days free, so they've got time for me is wrong, because everyone's still busy, especially producers and development. But I think you can spend that time as an individual trying to reach out to people, just to build your network and your sort of friends in a way to collaborate with after this, once it's all kicks off again. So that's like a fairly good use of time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was kind of thinking back of how I started, because I started freelancing, I think in 2008, which was, slap bang in the middle of a start of the recession, I think, which was not very good timing. But I kind of really learned to really, get quite good at finding collaborators and finding up and coming email addresses and names of exciting up and coming directors that were looking at doing, maybe their second short film or stuff like that, and really reached out to them and also asked, like, let's meet up for a coffee and you'll have to do the sound for your film, I just met a lot of people like that.
I love Instagram for, isn't as helpful for sound, but good for DOPs or actors, or I think visual formats, part of the industry. Instagram and Twitter is pretty good, but then if you're a writer or a sound designer, it's kind of harder to use Instagram, or maybe Twitter is better, but it is a really good source to find even other directors that I'm finding work that inspires me. Can actually be quite good.
Yeah,
there's a bit of clarity here on the process, leading a crew as a director on a series with multiple directors, which is actually a good question, because so Misfits obviously was season 5 and you're following a show style, and I was a fan of the show, so that style you just actually felt really lucky to be carrying on that tone. Poldark was more confused than that, because the first is on the second block and you end up shooting alongside the first block, hopefully all pulling in the same direction, but with a more abstract idea of what the show is. And something like Poldark is very much loved into existence by everyone who works on it, because there's no like one voice, this is what it's going to be like. You have your execs and you have your writers and you have your and you have your directors, but it's very much a collaboration. On that series, we had even some episodes had material that had been swapped around from books. There's 2 directors in the first season, so it sort of becomes an amalgamation of everyone's idea of what it is, and in the end you end up with something that hopefully is representative of trying to do the script's justice. But then one of us, a miniseries I directed, I was the only director, so it's a very different experience. But yeah, I think, and even his Dark Materials, I was the last block, and you're very much following a tone that's set by other filmmakers. It's a different experience to directing your own series or directing a film where you've got all control.
You find is that like the main difference that you find? Because you're usually you're a writer, a director as well, with your features and shorts and so on.
Yeah, I think you go in with your eyes open, and you're a part of the team, rather than it being you've got to bring a vision to it and a thumbprint to it, but it's a collaboration in order to achieve an end result. Whereas something like Gwen, you can be more single-minded.
There's another question, couple of questions. As a sound designer, what stage of production do you get involved? And another similar one after that.
Cameo.
Sorry?
There's a cat cameo.
Yeah.
Just
He's got questions. He's going to ask you questions later. But yeah, no, that's a really good question. It's funny enough, because I think Gwen is unusual. That was one of the few films that I sound designed that I wasn't involved with before shooting started. Because I think on things like Gods and Country and Life Skills and similar films that I've done, I usually come on board before the shoot starts. So then which is kind of which means that I can also go on location, not to kind of bother the crew or anything. I usually just go and just record some ambiences of the location. That's something I do quite a lot, just to inform myself of. It's really interesting from my point of view to get an understanding of why the director's chosen that location, and it kind of does inform the sound design in some ways for myself. Not just I obviously have my microphone with me, and I do tend to record like what I call a mini library, even if it's. Something I did a film called Darkness Visible a few years ago, which was a BFI fun and horror film set in Kolkata. So I got to go to India for 2 weeks, and I did a massive library back then. But UK-based locations, definitely something that I enjoy going and just familiarize myself with the locations. But it was funny that and then from there on, being involved quite a lot with in the picture editing process and doing little sketches and stuff like that.
We met you in the edit, and I've seen God's Own Country, which obviously is a fantastic film, incredibly successful film. But I loved, one of the many things I loved about that film was the texture of the landscape and the kind of the realism of that, but how actually it was used to enhance the story and emotion so beautifully. But yeah, I don't know why we didn't involve a sound designer until post. Maybe it was just something we didn't think about until later in terms of crewing up. We focused on the crew, and then met composer as well, James Barker, and as a composer, which is quite relevant to Gwen. But I think we just, maybe next time around that's something I'd do differently and involve people earlier.
But I think also, like the editor Mark Towns did an incredible job with the offline, adding a lot of sound in the offline. And I know that's I work with. Yeah, we worked together before as well, and I really, especially for me coming in at that time in the process, I really appreciate that. Obviously, with something which is a genre as well, it relies on a lot of kind of sound and music to kind of help inform the architecture of the film and how long you maybe hold a shot and things like that in a scene.
The sound and music question is good. Sorry, I am trying to listen to what Anna's saying, think about what I'm supposed to say, and also read questions. And for whatever reason, I find that really difficult. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to pick a question. So sorry to people that I don't answer. It's not because your questions aren't good. But there was this question here that I now can't find, which was collaboration between sound and music. This is Gwen's quite used for that because the music's quite minimalist and actually quite tonal. And there's points of time where I'm now not even sure whether it's sound design or music. And there was elements like the poem, the nursery rhyme that's sang in the film was manipulated by James into wind. So the wind at the opening of the film actually has the lullaby in it, mixed into the, so you wouldn't know. So there's actually a lot of feathering in this case, wasn't there? Is that normal, or do you think do you often collab closely with the composers, or?
Yeah, I mean it differs quite a bit. I think it very much depends on the director and the film. So some films I worked on where me and the director was like, me and the composer, and he said like, I want you to be like, to almost exchange material and to inject some instrumental elements into the more realistic sound kind of scape, and then the other way around. So I used some of the other way, so like kind of share my sound effects with the composer, and they make maybe a motif or a piece out of or maybe layering in sound effects from my kind of side into the music. But yeah, it very much depends on what the director is looking for.
Was there something you talked about when I was down in Brighton working with you about using, I don't think you did this on Gwen, but you used recordings of seismic activity within a mix?
Yeah.
So I think remember that as a really interesting idea. So
we did that on Gwen as well. Yeah, we definitely did that because looking at obviously the genre, it's nice to be able to play with some I call like, psychoacoustic elements. So you got like this kind of really low bass, which is like, I think it's 27 hertz, something which you don't really hear, you feel, and it's something you rarely come through when you're watching on your laptop or at home. It's just really something that will come through a massive speaker as in a cinema or something like that. So it's really subtle, but it does something to us as mammals, who react to low frequency elements quite well. It's not something that should be overused either. I think I've laid it in. Now I can't really remember on top of my head, but definitely the scene where, actually the clip that we shared and that we might watch through a bit later on, when Gwen kind of looks out the window, and then we just get this really, it definitely layered in with James's score as well. So
what was the phrase you used? Sorry, psychoacoustics.
Psychoacoustics, yeah. It's like this. It's great. It's really interesting. There's like the classic. Jump scares are the classic kind of thing. So it's like we don't really react to the visual. We kind of react to the sound before our brains kind of go, oh, there was if there's a face that jumps out, we register the sound if there's a big loud noise. So it's like this really efficient, effective device that we use in genre films a lot.
I think loud noises on jump scares, and obviously we have a jump scare in our film, and we do use
thunder,
scream,
that was great.
Pig in there. I'm from a pig farm, so got to get pigs in there.
Oh yeah.
Loud noises on jump scares can get a bit tiring and can get a bit over the top, can't it?
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a film that is just bombarding you with false scares where the sound's doing all the work. You kind of need that balance, don't you, between the way you feel being in that scene and then when it's just a loud noise, because it's fright or flight, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. It works. But as you say, it can be, but I think we were quite a bit more clever. I think Mark was really he was good at what we call the little teaser sounds. So you kind of get lulled in. It's so quiet, and then you got time, what I call micro sounds, little creaks. You get the breaths, you get these skills, so you kind of start leaning in. And then, for example, that scene when obviously when in the Griffiths house, when we can just, her voice, it's not really loud, but it just we kind of, it's not quite a jump scare, but it does have a similar kind of effect. I think I definitely jumped the first time I watched it.
Well,
It's not something that's loud.
In the Lightbox Cinema in Toronto for TIFF, and that was probably the first time I heard it in a big cinema, and you really got the space, so it definitely helped in terms of teeing an audience up to deliver a scare. If there's a noise that sort of just catches your ear from behind you, it puts you on alert, doesn't it, in a very primal way. And I remember that, just sort of like right at the back of the room, you could hear this creaking. Creaking,
right.
Yeah, definitely tease you up for it.
Yeah.
There's a question here about notes that take to set. Anonymous attendee, what notes do you bring with you to set to help you direct? Do you create a shot bible? Yeah, I do quite a lot of prep, so I will shot list everything and then be willing to throw that away. I will storyboard some sequences, but not all. And I have my notes, just sort of basic notes on what that scene I would like to achieve with that scene. I often then don't look at them because I'm running around and my notes get ignored, but having done them is very helpful on the day. It gives you a plan to sort of work from and change. Is there any other questions in here that you...
There's quite a few. I'm trying to keep up. And
who has the cat? I thought it was one of mine, and
I sorry, it's gone out now. I know it was meowing, and I was so engrossed in the chat that I forgot to.
So here's a question: what would you like from a director before production begins to help make your job easier?
Me, I guess a script. I guess, and any kind of, references from the director, which can be anything. It does. I mean, references don't have to be another film. It can be a work of art. It can be a painting. It can be a sculpture. It can be, anything, music, or a book or anything like that. So anything that it's like any kind of something that kind of gives reference for maybe the emotion that you're after for key moments in the film or the story. Things like that is really, really, I mean, I like how usually the more time I've got before I get to put pen to paper or kind of doing the first sketch or maybe a key scene is sent it to the edit, is stuff that I just like think about stuff, and trying to come up with some good ideas and share with the director when there's a good time. It's quite, it's not a huge amount really. I just like to get the script and then have time trying to mull it over.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's a question here we could probably both talk about, which does go back to getting into the industry. But where to start if you don't really know where to start with getting into the industry? Very similar position to me when I began. But I think it does come through young people's festivals or student festivals or just festivals in general, where you start to bump into people, be they programmers or producers or other filmmakers, and things like BAFTA Guru's really good, obviously BFI Network, and Skill Set, and there's, I feel like there are communities which fortunately a lot of which are online, so even now with lockdown you can still be a part of. I actually found a bit of a community in doing sci-fi 48-hour film challenges. I did one in 2010 and one in 2011. Met a lot of people that way as well. I think it's sort of day by day, inch by inch, you start to meet people. But then bizarrely, one of the first people I ever met at a film festival when I was like 14, I still see regularly. They're a programmer at a film festival.
Mm.
So people that you've met, you know, stay in touch with.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's all about kind of making connection, just getting to know people, and, you know, being someone that people start recognizing or recognize your name or things like that. So it just takes time, doesn't it? It's like, but what else I was thinking? Yeah, for sound or for kind of post-production, I always say that just get in touch with people in the industry and ask if they can sit in and shadow them for a day or half a day or a couple of hours, something like that. There are a lot of really, you know, people who started, I mean, I was very lucky to landed my first kind of assistant job with a really kind of established kind of company and sound designer like that. But people who are reaching graduates, that I just tell them just get in touch with this list of directories of people and obviously IMDb and the rest. So get in touch with people, just ask if you can sit in and see people, watch people work and see if it's really is something that because it's so hard to get an insight of what their job is like unless you kind of get and sit in and watch people work, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's sometimes this misconception over big breaks. I think it's very like incremental. Definitely. This one step at a time. It's lots of smaller breaks that might lead to something big rather than, you know, strike of a opportunity. Sort of working away inch by inch.
Yeah.
It's a good question here about, which I've now lost again, about process and feedback, because I came and spent a bit of time with you in Brighton and we sat through stuff, and then you would complete a reel and we'd share that, but it's sort of a bit of both, isn't it? A little bit of step by step and then a bit of distance.
Yeah, I think that it's how I usually kind of explain the process that I've worked out works best for me, is that it's got something called a spotting session where we meet for the first, well, not the first time, we didn't meet before that, but when we sit together with the editor and we watch through the film and we talk about it, and which is, I think, apart from the script, because obviously I rarely see, if I'm lucky to see kind of key scenes or things like that before that, is probably the first time I watched through the whole thing with director. And it's really, and that's when we talk about it, I take notes, and then I usually go away and do something, what I call a first pass. So this is just me talking about my, you know, when I do sound effects and the sound design. So I just go away and taking all your notes into account, and then I add what I think works. And then I do like a first version, if you like, of the sound for the film. And it doesn't mean that every detail is there, but the broad strokes and anything that we had, like that you as a director have as your kind of ideas that you want to try out. And then I got you to come down to Brighton and we just sit together and I play it through. So we listen to it in an environment where we just really focus on the sound and don't worry about the grading or the, you know, that much, and just, focus on what it sounds like together. And we sit and I think that's one of, I think it's really useful. I always say, like, definitely have director reviews for sound design is so important. You don't want to leave it to the mix.
It's one of those things also, watching 5 minutes is very different to watching the full duration, isn't it? So you can do it incrementally, but then you do have to at some point stand back and try and get an idea of the journey of the sound and how it builds, and that can be tricky.
Yeah, it really definitely helps. You have to like watch it on a run, as we call it. So you take the scene before and after to see how maybe this key scene or the scene where they've got a lot of really abstract kind of ideas, or it's got a big climax, things like that. So you really feel how it lands and how the pacing feels and things like that.
There's a question here I like the phrase for door knocking, which is a great way of introducing yourself to people in the industry. But I think one of the things to realize there is that everyone is, you know, I think very up for helping other people out and for advice and to, but don't be surprised and don't be frustrated if you don't hear a response straight away, because people are busy or get distracted with other things or mean to get back to you and don't. So don't be afraid. just a really friendly introduction. Hello, I like your work. This is what I've been doing, or would you watch this? It's just been at this festival or whatever. It doesn't have to be super formal. It can just be kind of like a gentle hello. But then if you don't hear anything back, it is fine to chase that up. Chase is probably the wrong word, actually. Follow, because if it is too many times and if it is too demanding, people will get annoyed with you. So don't take it personally if people don't get back straight away. But yeah, I'd say follow up, but just give it a little bit of time, and then touch base, to use the reach out, to use the LA phrase, again at some point later on. But yeah, I think everyone's always well-meaning. Everyone, remember that people do want to help find the next, generation of talent. So if you take the opportunity and reach out to people. I mean, I used to do a lot of emails and contact a lot of people. Didn't always get an answer. Sometimes I did. It was a bit like carpet bombing. Yeah, I think it's worth. We've got the time to. I'm in a situation, even having directed a fair amount of TV in my first film, where there's still people that I want to reach out to and take advice from. And I was in a position recently, in a situation with a opportunity that came up where it was beyond anything I'd done before, and I reached out to 3 people, all of which have done the type of thing that I was being asked about. And out of the 3, one person got back to me and we had a good chat and it was really helpful. The other 2, I won't hold it against them, and they just have other things to do, or meant to get back to me or didn't, or never saw it because it just got lost in their inbox. So I think everyone's always asking for advice or for tips or for intros at whatever point you are in your career. So yeah, don't be afraid to do that. I think it's just being polite and friendly is the key, right?
Yeah, definitely. And people starting out, when I kind of ask me the similar question, I just say, don't be afraid of. They always worry about being a pain or being coming across as rude if they ask more than once, kind of thing. And I would say, I've been in that situation. I've just kind of emailed people, and sometimes cold emails, which aren't maybe the best thing to do, but I've very rarely got replies from that. But then sometimes you do, and they're usually really good and things like that.
Yeah.
I always kind of say that it's definitely worth kind of having something in common with the people you're contacting. So even if it's like a contact that you got in common, or someone that acquaintance or things like that makes a huge difference, definitely.
And even if through the noise. Cold emails are tricky, so you do again like a common ground, or just being open and friendly in the email is obviously helps break it down from being a cold email. But even if they don't respond, sometimes they've read it. So just being aware of what you're trying to achieve can be good.
I've got a question here similar. It's not actually that similar to what we said before, but so I think it's quite a good one about does a good temp sound design from the edit room help or hinder the sound designer and approach with relationship with the editor? I think that's a good one, because I know that I've obviously worked with quite a big array of different editors, picture editors, but I think definitely for something that's specifically genre films, I think it's a great, if the editor has time to inject kind of or lay a bit of sound to describe something that's really kind of important for the story, it's definitely beneficial for sound designers. So yeah, that's a good thing. And I think definitely I probably you know this better than me, well, when you're kind of screening it to producers and financiers and stuff like that, and the rough cut, you want something there, right? You want, even if it's temp, just to really describe things, especially if you got a film where there's a lot going on off screen, or there's something supernatural or the rest, that you want obviously that to be part of the film early on.
And to follow on from that, there's a question here about being involved in the shoot, and can you give the sound recordist instructions? How much is there between the mixer on set can there be a collaboration there, or are they like separate warring parties who are like, no, go away, this is how I do it?
So was that a question, or a question for me, or from someone
Yeah,
else?
it is. That was me
Oh.
asking a question that someone's typed up really well. The relationship with the mixer on set, the sound recordist on set, and can you give them notes? Can you talk about, can you give the sound recordist instructions to what ambient wild sound to capture, or do you normally go about recording on yourself to shoot? And can that be a good collaboration, or?
Yeah, I mean, I always usually, once I've read for a script and I'm got brought on board before the shoot, I always do what I call a wish list of wild tracks. And I call it wish list because it's obviously, I've no idea what the conditions are like on set, if you run out of time or what it's like. So it's usually sounds which I feel like, oh, we'd be really, if it's something really specific that we will struggle to get in post-production, or that is just really, maybe you're on location, there might be a place where you next to this river or waterfall or something, and you're just there for that day or half a day. It's really useful to have wild tracks for post-production for us to use that are really specific for that location and important for the film. I would probably not ask the sound recorders to record winds and stuff. I've got a quite large wind library myself, but by now. But yeah, things like doors, things like that. But only if there's time. I always say, Richard, like, don't worry if it's.
Kind of going back to making short films, but that was a mistake I used to make very early on in my shorts, was not getting an ambient wild track. And then all of a sudden you don't have that one overall room tone that connects all the shots together. Yeah,
that's really important to have. Yeah, room tones. Well, that's something that usually most sound recorders, most experienced sound recorders, that's something that they, is kind of
I'm talking about like me being 16 years old and just shooting something and then cutting it together and being like, why doesn't this cut? And then you're like, it's going between different tones. That was like a really early thing. I remember making short films myself, which is obviously
amazing.
A different world, but
yeah, but it's amazing because you learn so much. I mean, that's the thing. It's so, I've spoken to students who ask me, should I do an MA in sound, or should I find a job? And I'm like, I always say, because that's my experience, like, you will learn so much by just doing, and you can't learn it from a book. You can't, there's a lot of things you can learn from, the theory and stuff like that, stuff I learned really late. But yeah.
Well, it's like now is a really good time to soak stuff up. Obviously, everyone on this is being very proactive and listening to us rabbit on. I'm sort of trying to do a similar thing. So this morning I woke up, it was like Christmas, because Roger Deakins has created a podcast.
I know, right?
Of all the people that I want to hear a podcast from, it's Roger Deakins. So listen to episode 1 this morning, although it's sort of like I normally listen to podcasts commuting or, so to sit down and listen to a podcast, you're really
weird. Yeah.
But so
that's brilliant.
But there's only so much you can do. Like, I'm also reading, there's a couple of books that I'm supposed to have read that I've not read, because I've just found them a bit dry. But then there's others, like William Goldman's Adventures in Screen Trade, which I just chewed up and really enjoyed. But I probably should be doing more of that right now. But there's only so much.
Yeah.
I feel like we're in lockdown, let's do something is great. Yeah. But there's also only so much. There's no point giving yourself anxiety, as in we've got all this time to give ourselves our own personal film school. Yeah. It's like you cannot, doing a little bit, I think, goes a long way in this.
Yeah, definitely. It should be fun. I mean, that's the thing. You shouldn't feel that you need to read everything or listen to everything, and it's be selective and do what you feel like.
Watch list in lockdown. You've got all this time to watch films, and actually for every one film I get through, I'm like adding another 4. So the list is longer than getting through it, which is, just, I think people are putting a lot of pressure on themselves to create or to make that thing that I can make in lockdown at home. I think actually just taking on what you can take on and remembering to enjoy it and not sort of fill yourself with anxiety because you're not doing enough at the moment. Yeah. Be productive, but be self-motivated and continue to work. But I think, you also just can't drive yourself crazy.
No.
trying to keep up with
That's
everything.
important. Yeah, and do something. I mean, I always think like, yeah, I work, I do. I mean, I'm very lucky to be working at the moment, but God, it's just mix it up a bit and do something a bit different. So it's not hard when you're in your passion about something to just forget about the rest of the world sometimes. I've got another question. Sorry, go for it.
Go for it. No, you go for it.
I just had a question here. How long did it take for Anna to, from the get-go, to work on sound till completion? And if I was contracted weekly? I think contracted me, I guess me meaning if I, invoicing or stuff like that. No, it was a kind of a set of weeks from start to finish, which is quite standard to
if someone was like, we're going to contract you weekly, I'd be like, why, are you about to fire me?
Yeah, exactly. We'll see where you're at next week. If it's not good enough, you're off and we get someone else. I think Gwen, I think it was roughly a week in post-production from lock, the lock date, picture lock, to pre-mix started. It was probably 5 weeks or 6 weeks, something like that. So you feel like a week per reel plus another week.
And that's then, in your 2 million indie production level,
and then 3 weeks mixing and then 1 week for deliverables. So yeah.
Big film, you might get longer, I guess. I'm going to do a very school teachery thing. I can see that there's questions going into chat, but our questions are in Q&A. So the questions in chat are the lost questions, which I can't handle 2 browsers with questions in. So with the Q&A,
is that questions that? Oh, crikey!
There are. There's 10. I don't know. So sorry to people that have posted questions in chat. Questions are in specific Q&A bit, so please put them in there for our sanity. There's 2 screenplay questions in a row, which I'm going to try and answer. Method practice for writing a screenplay. So I've only written 3. One's Gwen, Gundog, the next one, which I've written with the same producers, and then a 3rd script, which I started writing in lockdown. But my process is very much to outline and to have an idea of the character and the world they're in, and then to outline that beat by beat. And initially starts out as a 1 page. That 1 page extrapolates out into 10 pages, and I try and put more detail in. And when I've got 10 pages, I know I've got a script, and then I'll start writing the script. And I will change things as I go, and I'll deviate and I'll play around, but it will be based on that outline. I find having that outline, Anna's like, you're talking about scripts, I can disappear now.
No, just
cat related?
No, it's just sunshine related. I'm not. Sorry, yeah.
A tan, you Swedes, Yeah, so that's kind of my quick bullet point process on writing. I'm not one of these sit down and come up with it and it flows and amazing. And also, I really like working with development execs. So producer Tom Nash, I have a close relationship with him in terms of developing and things I'm developing, treatments or outlines for TV shows or other scripts. I really have to develop them a lot before I start writing. And I'd like to collaborate in doing that. I think working with script editors or producers with a script mind is helpful because it's a collaboration and you push it further by working with other people. What's your cat's name, by the way?
Sorry. Paddington.
Paddington. Excellent.
I didn't name him. I got him from Cattery in Hastings.
All right. Oh, that's good, help a cat out rather than...
Exactly right, yeah.
That's how it should be done. I don't have any pets, so you're not getting any interesting pet action this end, I'm afraid, no. I was about to a question about animals in your films, but should I do another? There's another question here about sound. How much of your sound design is generally created from scratch as opposed to libraries or your own collection? And how much input do you have in the final mix? I've been worried that the re-recording mixer might miss some detail in your work after alter the sound. I think Jules going to be laughing at this.
But yeah, there's a lot of questions there, but I think they're really good. The first one, how much of your sound design is generally creating from scratch? I think unless I was working on a sci-fi, I doubt I would create something from scratch. All my sounds are, I don't use very many plugins or processing. I try to record, just collect good recordings. I do a lot of my own recordings, but I obviously buy a lot of great libraries. There's loads of really good independent sound libraries out there at the moment these days. So yeah, if that helps answer your question. Like I recently worked on I think a short sci-fi film where I created quite a few things from scratch, but yeah, that's very much depends on genre and what kind of sounds you're after. I mean, occasionally, I think these days I try to use, just good recordings and layer things up and play with volumes and things like that. Maybe you should, the minimum amount of processing I do is pitching and EQing and things like that, and a bit of reverb, and yeah, that's about it really.
So
especially, go for it.
I've built a pile of books because I was just asked a book question.
Oh, great.
And, so I do enjoy reading, but a book on filmmaking, sometimes they're just dry. And there's so many that are highly rated that I started reading. I'm just like, I'm not going to carry on with this. However, I have a small pile here that I'm now going to product placement. The best is Sidney Lumet, Making Movies. Best book on filmmaking ever written. It's funny. Sidney Lumet is a brilliant filmmaker, so why wouldn't you want to hear what he says? And he's hilarious, so read that. Another on they know what they're doing because they've done it, they're funny, is The Adventures in the Screen Trade, William Goldman, which is an absolute classic and is on the top lot of list of books to read. That one's good. And then another one, it's the trilogy of people that know what they're doing. Walter Murch, In the Blink of an Eye.
Oh yeah.
Again, on a lot of lists.
Second that.
Your Man from Sound as well.
Mm-hmm.
Editing and stuff.
I think it's the best books written about sound as well. Sure.
I should read one, not read that one. This one is so bad that it's falling apart. And I don't know if it's like a staple, well-known one, but it's one of the first that I was given or bought. So this book's old. We had it for over 10 years. Movie Maker's Masterclass. Private Lessons from the World's Foremost Directors. That one is great because it's just a chapter with it's just a journalist who's gone around chatting to filmmakers. Got the Coen brothers, Cronenberg, Jean-Luc Godard, David Lynch, Oliver Stone, Lars von Trier, Wim Wenders, Wong Kar-wai, John Woo. Like, that is good because it's bite-sized. You can sort of just read one director's little bit, and then a bit more dry but are good. Aristotle's Poetics, not to be fancy, but that's a fantastic book on storytelling. This is like a broken down one rather than actually reading an ancient text. And then for working with actors, improv is pretty, but again, I found that a bit of a chore, but it has useful stuff in it. That was my impromptu little book sales.
Williams Book Club.
Yeah, I got enthusiastic and went and did it. So that's out there now. There's some others, but I just sort of found them a bit heavy going.
Yeah, I find books on sound really hard to get through, especially the theoretical ones. I mean, as you can tell, I'm not anti-theory, but I'm a bit like, if it's not, that's my personal take. If it's not like if you can't apply it effectively, then yeah. But yeah, no, I definitely second the Walter Murch in Blink of an Eye. I think that's one of the best books that have been written on sound design in my you know.
I love that Werner Herzog talks about the Peregrine. So his favourite book, and if you watch his masterclass on that big masterclass subscription thing, he is in tears talking about this book, about the Peregrine, which is like a natural history observation of the Peregrine, which is great. But also, Attenborough has recorded a narration of it, so you can listen to Attenborough reading it, which obviously improves it immensely. But why I think he loved it is because talking about craft of something, particularly sound, often is dry, and often anecdotal lessons can be helpful.
Definitely.
Process helpful, technical. So I think the reason Werner loves the pen is because it's about the emotion, it's about observation, it's about detail. So I think that's why that's his favourite book on making. Even, obviously, it's not about filmmaking, but he thinks you can more from reading that book and one person's observation of a bird of prey than you can by reading the 7 basic plots.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, yes. How much crew did you use on sound editorial? Yeah, well, that's just a note that I forgot to mention at the very start, which I promised myself I would straight away. Yes, if you haven't, I'm sure most people know this, but yes, especially on all the films I work on, I'm part of it. I'm just one person in a team. Sound design is very much a team sport, and we had a fantastic team on Gwen. Sound editorial was myself and Michelle Woods. Michelle Woods, the dialogue and ADR supervisor. And we had an amazing Foley team led by Blair Slater, Foley supervisor, who was the award-winning Foley supervisor worked on things like Mad Max, Fury Road, and House of Flying Daggers and stuff like that. So based in Australia. So we were very lucky to work with an incredible Foley team and Michelle on dialogues and ADR. And then also Jules Woods here was our re-recording mixer.
It's the dream team.
Dream team. It was great because I think also, which I learned the hard way, I think, over the years. Coming back to why I really enjoy doing reviews with the director is like once I always kind of do sound effects and do all the sound design bits, and then I get there once Michelle has finished the dialogue edit and put the ADR in there. Sorry.
Your agent's calling.
Sort of something. She sends that to me, and then I get sent the Foley, and by that time I would have obviously had some Foley notes to the Foley team. And I think Gwen is really a good example of kind of all those kind of departments working really well, exceptionally well together, and also having, I think one of my first notes to Blair was like, the Foley will be center stage in this film quite a lot of the time, which is quite sometimes quite unusual in films, but to really you get the detail and the silence and the isolation, it's really enhanced by the great Foley that you can almost like play a bit louder sometimes so you really feel like you're zooming in and you almost smell the place.
ADR is a controversial thing.
Yes.
Because sometimes you need it to generate background conversations that are deep and you don't hear, or because you want it add breathing. But I feel like our ADR was mostly breathing.
Yeah. Sorry, we lost you there.
Oh, am I back?
Yep.
ADR often used in TV as a way of plugging holes and nervous execs filling a scene with exposition. But you can always tell, no matter how good the ADR is, right? What's your thought?
I think that's debatable. I think, you got the classic thing when you got, the shot of some back of someone's, the classic thing when you're trying to, as you say, add information in the narrative after you've shot it, and you maybe add an ADR line where that explains something in the film or the story, and that can feel sometimes, it depends how sometimes if it's rushed at the end, you kind of tell when something's, as you say, your experience, you go, yeah, I definitely could tell that was ADR kind of thing. But I think there's definitely points. I think there was actually a place in Gwen that I forgot was ADR because it was really good. And that's like, so equally, ADR is sometimes used, it depends what it's used for and for its purpose, and also what the performance, and I think just testament to the people involved really. And Yeah, but I think Gwen, I mean, again, I forgot
And
to
some actors
mention,
love it.
sorry?
Some actors hate it because it's hard to get back to the place they were in that scene. I know,
Yeah.
you know, I think
Yeah.
it's Mike Lee I listened to talking about it, and he doesn't like doing it because he wants the emotion from that moment. But I think that's the kind of aim. But if for whatever reason you have to go back in, I think just using it sparingly when needed, isn't it, with ADR?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like we don't do ADR because we you know it's part of our job, really. You know, that's in the end of the day, it's our job to make sure that the audience can follow the story, that it's loud and clear, because at the end of the day, you know, part of all the sounds we hear in film and TV, the dialogue is the loudest thing. It's the most important sound that we hear, and it's very much the production mixer or sound recordist on set. It's their job to really protect the performance and make sure that we don't need ADR. But it's sometimes you really can't help it, especially if you're doing a period drama piece and there's a plane over, you know, so things like that. Sometimes obviously you can try and fix it in post, but not always that you can. So then we record a bit more than we need, just in case, just to cover ourselves, and then we use as little as we need to, really. But yeah, it's a big part of this is part of the big sound puzzle, really, the sound jigsaw. But yeah, I think Jonathan Seal, our production sound mixer, and Henry Dyer, the boom op, they did an incredible job. Because I mean, I wasn't there on location, but I heard that it was quite windy and cold.
It was horrible. Yeah, don't shoot in November in Snowdonia. Obviously, for the aesthetic of the film, brilliant. But in terms of actually filming things, very slow and challenging for all departments.
Yeah.
I'm going to look like I'm distracted. It's because I'm writing down. There's someone asked for the list, so I'm actually going to write.
Fantastic. Yeah. Meanwhile, I could answer another question, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't type that quickly, so you've got ages.
Tell your story. Let's see. I think I answered that. Let's see. I've answered that. Oh, bear with me. I'm going to find another question. How did the sound team come together on Gwen? Was it based on knowing each other from other projects or some other way? Thanks, Owen Peters. Let's see. Well, on Gwen, we had obviously post-production facility company called The Farm, who were got to contract to do the mix. So obviously I had to work with their brilliant the recording mixer Jules, who I knew from before. We had worked together. Well. You'd worked with him, yeah, haven't you?
Poldark.
On Poldark, yeah. So you knew each other through that, worked together through that. So that was great. I think it really helps to have met or work together a bit before you do something that's, you know, a feature film which has a lot of kind of abstract sound design and stuff like that. So you got a bit of a really good way of, you know, you can be good way of communication, all that kind of sorted out, so you know each other through that. Definitely helps. But otherwise, and also the Foley, I think, Blair Slater and team also long-term collaborated with The Farm, so they suggested them, and I was like, it'd be awesome to work with Blair Slater and his team, so that was great. And then I had Michelle Woods, who I've worked together before with on many occasions. We've worked quite a lot of films together, and she was available. A lot of dialogue and ADR editors are booked up 6 months in advance, so yeah, I was lucky to get her on board. So yeah, that was us, really, the team there. So it's
I've
a mixture.
now written this down, and I don't know how to get it into the chat because technology is not. I'm gonna send this to the BFI Network team and make it their problem. So the team now have the list of books. I could hold it up to the screen, I guess. So this is the lo-fi version. Come on, the list. So I'm going to hold that there to be screenshotted momentarily. But the network team have that, so they can either tweet it or put it into the chat. But I felt like I had abandoned you, so shouldn't spend too much time on that. There was a difference between preparing for TV and preparing for a film. TV, I get a lot less time. So you are joining something that's already going. You're getting on a train that's already, you know, just stopping off to pick you up. And you are very much, obviously everything is a collaboration, but in vision, you're so far as you're very much a part of a machine, and it's about slotting into that. You can't run away with it and make it in your own vision. And you also, I know TV is obviously the growing medium and incredible things are happening in TV. And I'm excited by the opportunities in storytelling that you have in television. But it is a different medium, and there's in some ways you can't quite be as bold. So Gwen has little coverage, quite a lot of it's in single takes, but you know, I wouldn't be allowed to get away with that often in TV. I remember doing a series where I did work in a very blocking and camera working together to tell the story in a shot, and I was made to go back and shoot cutaways of TVs people are looking at that were in the shot, or cutaways of people pulling things from their pockets, or you know, just things that the producers in television want in order to recut the show, because often they're manipulating the footage because the scripts, you know, have been written in advance, but often they're still being tweaked, and maybe the later episodes haven't been polished as much as the first episodes, and you end up with ADR on the back of the head situation we're talking about. So often they want a little bit more flexibility. So I've actually been made to go back in TV and shoot little cutaways and pickups to give them material to edit with. Whereas in my own films, unless I really want that cutaway, I won't be shooting it. But in TV, they can make me. I think as a director, you are not king or queen in TV. The writers and the producers are. But that's not to say that you can't get involved as a writer and as an exec and, you know, take more control. But I think as a, inverted commas, jobbing director stepping onto a series, sometimes I love it because these dark materials, I just felt privileged to be involved. You know, door to be a part of that. I didn't mind that. You know, I get to work with an incredible writer, an amazing team of directors, and I'm one of 6 directors. Jack Thorne is a brilliant writer working with Bad Wolf, and I felt really privileged to be doing it. And I don't mind that I'm not, you know, the headline act. I'm like more than happy to just get stuck in and help everyone out and just do my block. But I think that's where film enables you to be a bit more expressive and say what you want to say. That said, I'd love to do that in TV as well. So I'm trying to develop stuff in TV because, and I'm sure everyone who's on this already realizes, TV is the growth industry, guys. Like there's opportunities to make films, but there's a lot more opportunities to make TV, and the actors are doing it, the directors are doing it. Top level people from all across the industry are taking the opportunity to tell bold, long form stories. So there's a way of doing it really well if you can.
And there's still that time you got time to develop characters and over time and in a different way than I guess you could. I mean, TV and film, TV has just changed so much since even I started in the industry. Just expectations, I think, from audiences, and it's huge.
But I think there's also an element where these opportunities are actually it's giving people a voice, but it's also taking away a voice, because maybe directors who would have tried to make their own films now won't, because they can, you know, scratch that itch and create through television. So maybe we're going to lose a whole generation of filmmakers to television, but that's television's gain in some ways. So yeah, I'd love to try and do both, but it's easier said than done. Because you work between both, don't you?
Yeah. No, it's very different. Not very different. I mean, depends. It's all relative, isn't it? But yeah, it's a slightly different process because you're working. Yeah, and also, I mean, it's just because my relationship, I guess, see it through the director, how different it is for directors to do, and how it's almost occasionally a slightly different purpose as well. Just a type of entertainment, and obviously where it's going to be enjoyed and how people are going to watch it.
you probably can't do so much of your seismic activity recordings mixed into the low end of the...
Yeah, just one example.
Might be able to do that.
Yeah, because as we say, like in the cinema, you've got like the audience sitting, in the middle of the palm of your hand. You can like take them, on a journey. You can really kind of you just envelop them, especially with sound. You got this power over really the audience's experience to such a high degree. While obviously in TV, sitting at home, and most people have got stereo tops, speakers. Probably
there's
not.
Been some notorious examples of television shows that have been pulled apart on social media because people can't hear it.
Really?
Obviously, people love, people love to complain, but there's been some where it's, and I was on a production shot in the same region as a production that went on television before we went out, and it got absolutely pulled apart for people not being able to hear it. And it was these questions: is it pronunciation? Is it delivery? Is it the mix? But television, I think people are nervous about if your general audience sat at home can't hear it and understand it, then it's uproar. So
yeah,
a lot of
definitely. And you've got different rules and different legal things to adhere to as well. I mean, the whole legality of it is like a broadcast media, and it needs to be accessible. So that's why the dialogue is the loudest thing, because it's, everyone has to be able to understand what's going on. Otherwise, they're going to switch channel, which is the last thing that obviously the channel wants. So it's, you got gets creative license with TV for sure.
There's a controversial question here, which is what the worst experience you've had working on a film. We can open that up to like commercials and TV. But is there anything helpful and non-scandalous that might be useful to mention to people?
The only thing I can think about is, I don't know the worst thing, but something which, again, maybe learned the hard way is not to assume anything. And also these days, I mean, I ask a lot of questions, even though it might be things that like obvious, even with people who have really experienced that I know that I worked before. I'm like, I have like a list of questions that I check with people, just because you just don't want to assume anything. I think that's very basic, but yeah. And also I always over prepare everything. If I go out, I've got like at least 2 hard disk recorders with me, and microphones and stuff, because you don't want to be, there's a lot of, you haven't got much time, and you just want to make sure that you've got, backups, and not just the files, just the software and files that you record and the project you're working on. But little things like that, which you don't want to learn those things the hard way of.
Without going into any individual experience, as a young sort of filmmaker starting out and just looking for opportunities, yes, you're looking for opportunities, but you have to remember your time is valuable and worth something. And there are a lot of people who would try and take advantage of you and your enthusiasm to benefit them. And even now, so I'm finishing a documentary and I've been entering it into film festivals. And some of the festivals are just environmentally focused festivals, sort of further along in if festivals happen at some point in the future. And one of them just ended, it was free, it was on Film Festival Freeway, it all looked really legit. And I heard back suspiciously quickly, and they sent paperwork in the response saying, oh, you've got in, well done, here's some paperwork, sign this over. And when you read into it, you're basically signing over the rights to a film. So there's that, you just have to keep, I think it's really important to put yourself out there and be keen and to hustle for opportunities, but also just keep a beady eye on people who are willing to take advantage of people who are keen to get industry, so eyes open.
Read the small print.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There's a question for you, which is a difficult question, so I'm going to make you answer it. What elements of design would you like to discover more? But
I've been staring at that question. I haven't tried to come up with an answer for that.
It's a good question. It's tricky. What elements of talent would you like to discover more? I guess I can say, I mean, I've always been a sci-fi. I mean, as a kid, I think, yeah, I've always been really into sci-fi from a really young age. And I guess it's something that I always was hoping I was going to work in more. And I think it's just the classic thing, isn't it? For sound design, right? Genre and sci-fi and fantasy and anything kind of the chance to create a world from scratch and what that sounds like is a real, that's a dream. And I'm lucky enough to be able to get to do that in many ways in my work already, and the work that I get asked to do and the work that I am lucky enough to be able to choose and say yes to. And the kind of work that kind of speaks to me is like stuff where you can actually try and build a world, even if it's like looking at, even like Gwen, it's like the world is realistic, but we're seeing it from Gwen's, her point of view, and it's very much like we're with her. And I was always very keen I was finding ways to not always, you don't want to find places where you can go step into the non-literal sound, ambiences and sound ideas like that. But it's not a place where you want to spend a prolonged time, and you want to be able to dip into it and at the right times, and then come back to reality and then go back in. So I think those moments where we're with her and we're seeing things from her point of view and experiencing the story from her emotional point of view is really exciting. One of the
biggest things to consider as a filmmaker is point of view, and whose point of view is it, and when are you inside their head? When is it subjective? When's it objective? Whether that's going where the sound is.
Exactly.
There's a quick question here about what film festivals can emerging filmmakers enter? A lot require you to have at least one credit. So I might touch, but I wasn't aware of the one credit thing. That sounds terrifying. So sorry if I misunderstood, but I don't believe that to be the case, that you need one credit, because there are sections at film festivals, whether or whether for debut filmmakers, I don't believe one credit in order to submit to the festival. That said, good place to look for festivals, bearing in mind festival entry can be expensive, so pick and choose, is the BAFTA qualifying section on their website. So what festivals will qualify, because it's just good with decent festivals. And I'd also say do sign up for something like Film Festival Freeway and look for festivals that are niche to your short film. So when I was a young filmmaker, I talked about the Cooperative Young Film Festival. I talked about the Cinemagic Film Festival in Belfast. There's also lots of student film festivals like the Watersprite Student Festivals. I think Screenfest, which is the one in Bristol, which is another student festival. So there's a lot, especially as an up and coming filmmaker, where there's age categories that can actually be really helpful, because it takes out people like who are in my position now who make to express something, and even if you made it for no budget, cut all of those people who are making commercials out and just submit. I found that really helpful, submitting to young people's film festivals, because it's a tighter pool and people are looking for talent there as well. But yeah, don't spend loads of money entering to 100 festivals, because festival submission can be like 60 quid for a top festival, or even some middle American festivals can be like 40 quid to enter. It's like, I'm not entirely sure if that's a good use of resources, to be honest. But Cannes is free. Obviously they only have 10 short films, so long shot, but it's free, so you might as well be in it. Clermont-Ferrand, if I'm pronouncing that right, is also free. So there are some good festivals that are actually free to enter. London Short Film Festival, I believe, is free as well. But yeah, it is worth submitting to festivals, with the caveat at the moment that we don't know when the festivals are happening. But
yeah, exactly, yeah.
William, do you consider yourself to be a young filmmaker? Yes, I do.
How young?
I'm 32, so I'm still pretty young to be doing what I'm doing. Obviously, you've got people like Paul Thomas Anderson or Steven Spielberg, who have achieved a lot more by this age, who are very young filmmakers. But Jaws at 26, wouldn't that have been nice? But I still consider myself a young filmmaker. When I go, it's why I'm growing a beard, so people take me more seriously. That said, I think when you're looking at festivals that are for young filmmakers, they're probably under 25. And when I talk about myself as like a young filmmaker, I was, 23 doing Misfits. I think of myself sort of around that age. 10 years in the industry at 32. It's that age maybe. But yeah, I think it's fun. I used to play a lot of rugby. I used to love rugby. If I was a rugby player, if I'd made it professionally, my career would probably be over now. Whereas in film, in some ways, hopefully, it's just beginning.
Yeah, that's the good thing about it, isn't it? There's no up age limit.
No, although you might start like saying when filmmakers stop being relevant is difficult, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, worry about that in the future.
Let's see.
Tom is back on. Does that mean I can see Tom?
Yeah, just getting close to Ethan, so I just thought I'd just...
Oh yes.
Sorry.
Time flies.
Yeah, it's popped up. You can see my dodgy painting sample. I'll just move over my chair over there. Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Just ignore me.
Can everyone else see you as well, or are we now just speaking to someone off screen?
No, everyone else can see me. Yeah.
That would be weird.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to sort of round up?
Yeah.
Like any really last words of wisdom that you want to share?
Me? Oh, goodness. I'm having a think, but yeah, no, go for it. If you can think of any closing remarks.
There's a question here to dodge that return volley. How much input do you give to actors on set? I try not to give them too much, to be honest, because I like to have met up before, got to know each other before, got to know, and that can just mean like a day out. That doesn't have to be rehearsals. And I've got to know the material, shared memories they might have with other actors, build a bit of backstory. I like that approach. A bit of history of the period. If it's Gwen, we went to sort of a couple of museums, isn't that fun? And just met a couple of specialists and got even etiquette of the time, just get a bit of period background. So on set, the worst thing I've found myself doing is just talking at an actor in their ear for too long. So I think every minute. And then if the conversations are based on conversations you've kind of earned the right to direct them, because it's based on a shared vocabulary or shared experience. Just coming in and talking at an actor halfway through a scene. I think less is more, for sure. And you can work before you've got to set.
Nice. I guess only think to kind of just sum things up, not quite, but yeah, I just, as always, always think of kind of to reiterate kind of, I guess, what I've said, touched a bit upon before, but just saying like, yeah, just trying to remind everyone, especially also forming those starting out, it's like to think of ways, then think of sound as like a real storytelling tool and not just a technical kind of craft. And just see it as, because I always have that, obviously I'm lucky to be working with directors who really are really curious about how they can use sound to enhance the story and tell the story, and maybe tell the audience about what's going on outside the frame as well. As I know we talked about kind of hearing creaks behind you and things like that, and just finding places where we can really kind of tell parts of the story that the camera can't show. And I think sound can be really, really good at that. But again, it's everything. It takes time to experiment. And I think the time is the one thing that is always in short supply in filmmaking. But to really, have those conversations early on
And one of my favorite parts of the process is just sitting with a director once I've done my first pass, and we sit there and it's like, all right, we've got something on the canvas. Now, how do we take this to how we take it to the next level, and how can we make it better, and how can we make it more interesting? And also, so it's always that, and then also the final mix, which is it's kind of an incredible, it's amazing kind of, it's a pure kind of team work kind of environment where we sit and we paint this picture together, which is something we should try and make it at least abstract.
Point on sound being storytelling, not purely technical, is brilliant. I think that's a really good point. I'm to add to that on a more entering the industry level. Like, one thing I think is really important is just don't look at shoulder positive elements of social media and communicating with other people and being able to see what people are up to and reach out to people. But also it's poisonous because everyone's presenting the best version of their career, and often it's BS. It's a projected version. And even if it is amazing, it doesn't matter because we're all on different journeys. And, you know, I look at filmmakers who I'm really inspired by their work, and I try and think of it as more art in the world and more film that I admire rather than being, and I try not to see it competitively. So I think just know that everyone's had a different route into the industry and everyone's entered at a different time. And it doesn't matter if you make your first film at 50 or 20, you know, if you're making the film you want to make, that's the important thing. So yeah, just try and take some of that anxiety and pressure out of it and just know you're running your own race.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to end it. And also just on Anna's point as well, I think with a lot of the films that we see a lot, because we watch a lot of short films, it's amazing how much or how little time has actually been spent on the sound, and how much good work on sound makes such a huge difference to the quality of the film, because it's something you instantly notice straight away. If you can have really great performances, but if the sound is terrible, it just straight away just kind of affects your whole, viewing pleasure, really, to be honest. So yeah, it's such a massive part, and it's something which I just think just doesn't get as much focus or attention as it should do, because it's just such a massively important part of film and filmmaking in general.
I think the director of Lights Out did a little test on YouTube where he put some awful video but with good sound, and then reversed that, and it's very clear that textural rubbish visuals can actually be quite nice with decent sound on. So sound, yeah, definitely a fundamental, more important than the picture, dare I say.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we can excuse bad. I mean, visually, and like you make something that's visually limited in terms of light and darkness and anything kind of abstract visually. But it's really, if the sound's there, good sound to support it, it's fine. I think you don't question it as much. But I'm going to just in the chat, I'm just going to make do a quick link to something I did. If anyone's interested in looking at kind of before and after examples of a scene, a few years ago I did a film called Adult Life Skills, and I've got on YouTube, you can see just the Foley on its own and the ADR and sound effects separately, and then the final mix. We
were sort of doing Gwen, but we just talked all the time. Sorry.
It's just kind of shows off what the different departments kind of create in separation. If anyone's interested to check it out,
we can share that with people afterwards as well. Great. Okay, we better wrap up just because I think Zoom might kick us off soon. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks, Tom. It was and everyone. I really enjoyed it. And nice
great. And I'll give you a shout next time we're down in Brighton, because it'd be great to do something with you in person, as it were.
Definitely. Yeah. Anytime.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers.